Kicking off at number 5, The Hallow. As you may know, I'm a huge proponent for British horror, mainly because the only thing we've really got to do over there is look out at a grey sky through a rainy window, and well, it makes for some pretty terrifying horror cinema. No more so than in 2016's The Hallow, written and directed by Corin Hardy, the man recently responsible for The Nun. Also, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, then this film stars both Joseph Maul, aka Benjen Stark, and Michael McElhatton, aka the brilliantly morose Roose Bolton. Great stuff. The Hallow plays out as a folklore tale of old, a family from the city, a newborn baby, and a malevolent creature out in the deep dark wood with strange twisted intentions. It's also a breath of fresh air from the cookie cutter creature feature that we see in modern cinema, and the departure from full-blown CGI with instead using old school practical effects make for some terrifying on-screen moments, bringing creatures from Irish folklore to a nightmarish reality. It's great, give it a watch.
Coming in at 4, you're next.
What is that?
This home invasion horror was released back in 2011 and follows the Davison family as they come under attack during their anniversary getaway. A gang of mysterious masked killers storm the house, but very quickly learn that one of the victims harbors a very special set of skills, making her perhaps one of, if not the greatest final girls of all time. Now, Your Next is the perfect result of an often mishandled storyline. We've seen it before, innocent families tormented by killers, but Your Next is different, so incredibly different. As the family sit and spat at the dinner table, they are very quickly interrupted by said killers, which sets off an all-night bloodbath. However, what sets this film apart from the rest is that it strays away from the tropes of the home invasion subgenre, and instead gives us with Erin, played by Shani Vincent, a character who is the furthest thing from a victim we have perhaps ever seen in the genre. She fights back against the intruders, showing us that it is not her first rodeo. She is highly trained in fighting and survival skills. Erin is not to be messed with, and neither is Your Next. Watch it, you'll not regret it. Coming in at 3, Freaks.
Google gobble. We accept her, we accept her. Google gobble, Google gobble. One of us, one of us.
Classic horror doesn't get more classic than Todd Browning's 1932 masterpiece Freaks, a film which managed to slip by Hollywood censors in a brief period before the Code Authority years. The film follows a circus and its beautiful trapeze artist who agrees to marry the leader of the sideshow performers, but his deformed friends quickly discover she is only marrying him for his inheritance. Now this film features a phenomenal cast of real-life sideshow performers, which is why the film itself following its release was banned in the UK for over 30 years. Yep, that's right, 30 years. Despite its age, Freaks is still one of the most disturbing and haunting horror films I've ever seen. Many other creators have been inspired by Todd Browning's work as well, such as Ryan Murphy, who borrowed heavily from the movie for his carnival-themed season of American Horror Story. Coming in at 2, The Woman in Black.
Nathaniel?
I'm so sorry guys, I hated to have to do that to you, but that scene just proves how absolutely terrifying the 1989 version of The Woman in Black is. For those of you who don't know, the film was directed by Herbert Weiss and is based on the book of the same name written by Susan Hill. It follows a young lawyer who was sent to settle the estate of an old widow who passed away in the seaside town of Crichton. The townspeople are reluctant to talk about or go near the woman's creepy home, and on top of that, no one will explain or acknowledge the menacing woman in black he keeps seeing. Ignoring the town, the lawyer goes to the house where he quickly discovers its horrible secrets. If you've seen the Daniel Radcliffe version, good for you. It's just not the best version. But don't worry, you can amend your mistakes by watching the superior 1989 classic. Do it. Just do it. And finally, coming in at number 1, Carrie. Yes, I know I said I wouldn't be picking obvious choices, but I can't not include Carrie, and you know it. Directed by Brian De Palma and released back in 1976, Carrie follows the story of Carrie White, a shy, friendless teenage girl who was sheltered by her religious mother. However, after being humiliated at prom, Carrie unleashes her powers on her classmates and her town. Based on Stephen King's novel of the same name, Brian De Palma very successfully brought his work to life in a gutsy and cutting-edge movie. At the time of its release, the cast were full of unknowns, including Sissy Spacek, Basic, John Travolta, Nancy Allen, and William Katz. What makes this film so damn good is that it makes you feel everything. Pain for Carrie, horror at what she does to her classmates, and fear that we have spent an entire film rooting for the villain. Carrie is sensational and despite its age, still holds up.
Kicking off at number 5, A Lonely Place to Die, 2011.
Huh?
2011 wasn't the greatest year for cinema, particularly when it came to horror, but strangely enough, this little gem of a high-octane mountaineering, rip-roaring horror thriller creeped in like an assassin with a sniper rifle in the wilderness. And it was wrapped in a package that wasn't really a horror film at all, which may have been why most people brushed it off, but boy oh boy, when we put the words survival and horror together, they are the literal definition of this film. Written and directed by Julian and Will Gilby, A Lonely Place to Die sets out as just another survival movie, a group of people facing up against Mother Nature, but then very quickly a fly is added to that ointment and the game quickly becomes a very different kind of beast. It stars Melissa George as Alison, an experienced mountaineer and rock climber who, alongside her friends Ed, Rob, Jenny and Alex, takes on a hiking and climbing trip to the Scottish Highlands. Now, as I said previously, the first half of this film is very much a survival horror, and if we're being technical, all of the technical expertise lies in the first half for reasons that I won't try and spoil for you. You see, as the hiking group are making their way up the mountain, they find something in the wilderness that sets them on a completely new path. And then before you know it, this film is cooking with gas, and a very unexpected conflict rears its ugly head. I'll try not to say too much because the narrative to this film is actually very entertaining, in line with most classic early 2000s British thrillers, but it really does go the distance in terms of transitioning from one film to the other. Yeah, it might be a little bit messy in places, but the point of this film is that we trust in the protagonist. For the most part, they're not idiots, particularly Melissa George's character, and we're right there with her as she's sprinting through the thicket, cuts and bruises and psychological trauma and all. Also, more importantly, this film is so damn entertaining. Sometimes we just want to see people climb a mountain and then get chased back down it. Alright? Fine. Coming in at number 4, The Omen. Geez, this film. Admittedly, as I get older, the impact of The Omen becomes less and less, but there's no denying that Damien Thorne, aka the Antichrist himself, is one of the most demonically fear-inducing kids to have ever stepped on screen. And the first time you see his twisty little smile is something that you'll never forget. Here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Pretty metal, right? Well, in essence, that's what Richard Donner's 1976 on-screen demonic onslaught really is. It's a religiously charged, meandering tale that drags us along through the hallways of hell on Earth. Now, I'm talking of the wider franchise in this case because the original film starring Gregory Peck is a much more subtle and creepingly quiet beast. The strange, spacious audio track, the wide lingering shots, and an absolutely terrifying performance from a 4-year-old boy, Harvey Spencer Stevens. I wouldn't necessarily advocate saying a prayer before you watch this film, but I wouldn't tell you not to either. Swinging in at number 3, The Wailing. Oh man, is this film good. South Korean cinema just can't seem to make a bad horror film, and at the top of that pile is The Wailing, written and directed by Na Hong Jin. In essence, this film is about spiritual belief and the inner conflict of the soul. It weaves differing, competing threads of spiritualism throughout, shamanism, ritualistic sacrifice, and even Christianity. Boiled down further, good and evil, angels and demons, which one ends up on top? Well, if you watch the film, you'll find an answer of your own. What you will find, though, is an occult masterpiece into the weird world of Korean folklore. This film does a pretty stand-up job at keeping you on edge throughout its lengthy 2.5-hour runtime, feeding you tiny scraps of narrative right up until the very end. Also, we haven't even talked about the murder, demon, zombies, or the exorcism, or the cave scene. Yeah, I really don't want to ruin this film for you if you haven't seen it, but take it from me, it's worth the nightmares. Coming in next at number 2, The Babadook.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook.
Are you terrified of creepy shadow monsters that lurk behind your wardrobe door? Then please sit down in a dark room and watch The Babadook, a 2014 Australian psychological creature feature from Jennifer Kent. I say creature feature in the loosest sense because, guys, seriously, what the hell is The Babadook? I still don't know, and it's got me pretty shook. That in essence is the success of this film though, the fear of the unknown, the strange, otherworldly sense that you get as a child trying to fall asleep in a bleak, unfamiliar house. It blends the supernatural with the surreal with a pinch of native Australian folklore to boot. Plus also, if you're a fan of the kid fighting back against the monster, then you'll be thrilled at 6-year-old Samuel played by Noah Wiseman, who absolutely steals the show. I appreciate that people have tried to find further meaning in this film's plot, its ending in particular, and while I think that there are wider cinematic elements that tie this film's plot together, without all of that, it's just a gut-wrenching, knees-weak, palms-sweaty kind of horror movie. You know, the best kind. It's a suspenseful, slightly off story about confronting the darkness that lies within. And finally, at our number one spot, The Witch. You know what? I get it if you don't like this film, I understand the criticism that it received, but let me tell you, you're wrong, because this film is possibly the most unnervingly, unexplainably, brilliantly strange piece of horror cinema of recent times. It ticks every box on my list, and I'll tell you why. This film is impossibly bleak. It plays like something forbidden, something that we just shouldn't be watching, a glimpse into the long forgotten world where the devil still reigns. It begins with the banishment of a New England family in the 16th century, where we briefly get a glimpse of colonial era society and a newly found North America, but that world is soon shut off and all we're left with is the woods and the witch. Seriously, this film does so much with so little that it's testament to Robert Eggers, the director and writer, as this was his first debut film, and he's fastly becoming my favourite horror filmmaker, so keep your eye out on him. Again, I really don't want to spoil this film for you, but if you laugh at the idea of being terrified of a goat, then let me introduce you to Black Phillip.
Remove thy shift.
Coming in at 5, Goodnight Mummy. This Austrian horror was released back in 2014 and follows twin boys who move to a new home with their mother who has just undergone a face-changing cosmetic procedure following an accident. What makes this film terrifying as an audience member is that we're never quite sure what is happening, let alone what is real and what is not. The twins develop a form of Capgras syndrome, a syndrome which makes them believe their mother has been replaced by an imposter. The film begins as a slow burn, as the twins' investigation stems from a curious nature before it turns into something far more cruel and horrific, which quickly divides us as an audience, conflicting us as we wonder whether we should be rooting for the twins or the mother. What sets this film apart from the rest of our list is that the film has no surprises. It's not filled with jump scares or twists and turns, it's in the purest sense horror, as we watch innocent young children do unspeakable things. It's an uncomfortable watch, but a masterclass in horror nonetheless. Goodnight Mummy, check it out.
Swinging in at number 4, Backcountry, 2014.
I didn't reach for that once. I wanted to bring it in case we needed it, which we do.
Can't get reception out here anyway.
Well, I would have loved to try.
Boy, this film is good. Really, really good. And it may perhaps be the most traditional of survival horrors on this list, but that's by the by because they're all terrifying in their own unique ways. This one though, this one has a little helping hand, or a claw. Listen, I love bears. I've got a bear tattooed on me, but they are immensely powerful wild animals, territorial creatures that will tear your face off and eat you given the chance. Bears are terrifyingly efficient animals and, well, that sounds like a pretty decent horror villain to me, right? And whilst that might come off as a little bit spoiler-ish, come on, you need only take one look at this film and realise it's going to feature some kind of nature. So yeah, consider yourselves pre-warned, I guess. Written and directed by Adam McDonald, the Canadian filmmaker that would go on to create 2017's Pewacket, Backcountry is loosely based on the true story of a man-eating bear attack in Missinaba Lake Provincial Park in Ontario back in 2005. The film itself tells the tale of Alex and Jen, a couple that decides to take a weekend camping trip out in the wilderness. Now, Alex figures himself as quite the capable outdoorsman, and Jen is admittedly an unabashed rookie. But the true choking fear of this film is how quickly things can go wrong in the wilderness if you approach Mother Nature with arrogance, much to the umbrage of Alex. Now, I won't say any more because this film is reliant on the unraveling of its plot to deliver the anxiety, but part of the true joy of this film is in its bare bones approach to filmmaking. For all intents and purposes, this film demonstrates the strengths that can be found in independent cinema. Put it this way, if Backcountry starred anyone of big name cinema, it wouldn't really have done the same job. That's not to say that the acting in this film isn't remarkable though, because it really is, and for a cast of essentially 4 people and a bear, you better hope the acting is good. Yeah, Backcountry, really good one, give it a watch. Next up at number 3, Eden Lake, 2008.
Is that new?
Yeah, do you like it?
I like the bottom.
Where do we even begin with Eden Lake? I'm not entirely sure. You see, whilst this film very much is the definition of survival horror, also the means in which that survival takes place is a whole different topic. As far as British horror cinema is concerned, 2008's Eden Lake has made some serious waves, although at the time it wasn't exactly heralded as a breakthrough piece of cinema, but nevertheless, because in hindsight it managed to define a very specific time and place, which is important, particularly when we're analysing the term survival in this sense. Also, it's also important to note this film will make you very angry. You will not watch this film and find any sense of resolution. In many ways, it's British cinema's attempt at the new French extremity. It's hopeless, and for a survival film, that's a really bleak premise. Nevertheless, there are many things to be found in 2008's Eden Lake that define the parameters of what is needed to make us care about a character's survival. Just in this case, it might not be those that we expect. Written and directed by James Watkins, who would go on to direct 2012's The Woman in Black, Eden Lake tells the tale of a nursery school teacher, Jenny, played by Kelly Riley, and her boyfriend Steve, played by Michael Fassbender. Also, it's important to note that both Riley and Fassbender deliver some remarkable performances in this film, but the show is well and truly stolen by Jack O'Connell, one of my favourite British actors of all time, and who truly manages to steal the show here with absolutely electrifying performances throughout. O'Connell plays a teenager named Brett, the psychopathic leader of a gang of youngsters who torment Jenny and Steve during their weekend camping trip. And yeah, that's kind of all there is to it really, but start to finish, this film is a white knuckle ride that you can't help but watch. Like I said, this film will make you angry, it will make you scream at the screen, it will make you question why you're even watching it. But like I said, putting this on a survival list is kind of a double standard, but as far as making you feel something in terms of horror, this one is in a league of its own. Coming in at number 2, You're Next, 2011. Yeah, of course, although we may have lowered the tone a little bit with Eden Lake, we can bring up the full frontal horror joy with 2011's You're Next. And this film definitely wouldn't be a survival horror in the traditional sense, unless that is, if it wasn't for one character in particular. Erin, one of the most awesome final girls ever written, but hey, we'll stop there because no spoilers, right? On that note though, it's also probably appropriate to mention that this film is technically a home invasion movie, but hey, again, thanks to Erin, this film is very much a survival film. But again, no spoilers. Hey, whatever, you guys can probably guess by now what's going on with this film, but for those of you that haven't seen it, please give You're Next a watch because it's a necessary entry for any horror fan's catalogue, and if this one's flown you by like a straight arrow from a tree line, make sure you go catch it. Written by Simon Barrett and directed by Adam Wingard, You're Next tells the tale of Erin, played by Shani Vincent, and her boyfriend Crispin, who head out to a family reunion at his parents' vacation home in rural Missouri, along with his dysfunctional brothers and sisters and their partners, respectively. What starts as the stereotypical family comedy slash drama, and believe me, some of the dialogue in this film is laugh out loud hilarious, and Barrett holds impeccable detail to the tightness of the dialogue with some surprisingly fantastic performances from the supporting cast. It also serves to descend into total chaos as the film rolls onward, and trust me, once the trigger on this film has been pulled, there is no going back. Again, this film might make you question who's surviving who, but hey, it's fun nonetheless. Seriously, this film is so damn entertaining that the usual tropes of isolation and despair that comes with survival horror aren't at all found. They're not needed. In that regard, it sticks out like a sore thumb, but that's exactly why it deserves our praise. Give this one a watch. And finally, coming in at number 1 spot, Deliverance, 1972.
You done taken a wrong turn. See, the Cherry River don't go nowhere near Antrim.
Ding 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 ding. Yeah. Of course. Come on guys, now for me there is no greater survival horror movie than 1972's Deliverance. There just isn't. Nothing has yet been made to surpass the mastery of it. And do you know what's really weird? This film isn't ever really considered to be a survival horror movie. Yeah, that's a head scratcher because all I'd say is, what? Really? Have you seen it? This film is the definition of survival and it's horrifying. And 75% of this film is some of the most perilous, tense, extreme situations of man versus nature versus man in the wild ever caught on camera. Deliverance is awesome, start to finish, and horror aside, it's a landmark piece of cinema that should be witnessed by any appreciator of the art form. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about one of the most messed up movies ever made. Written and directed by John Boorman, based upon the novel of the same name by James Dickey, Deliverance tells a tale of four men, Lewis, Ed, Bobby and Drew, who decide to head on down to Georgia on a canoe trip. Yeah, it's a simple setup, it's a simple delivery, with phenomenal execution. This film just couldn't have been made by today's standards, I'm sure of it. It was the last vestige of awe-inspiring on-location cinema that truly gives this film the scope it serves. Put it this way, halfway through the production of Deliverance, which was shot entirely on location, James Dickey, the author of the novel it was based on, came on set drunk out of his mind and he started a fist fight with John Boorman because he was angry about a certain rewrite. Then they made up and they were good friends. Yeah, exactly. I almost don't want to say anything about this film's plot, particularly about a few key moments, but trust me on this one, if you haven't seen Deliverance, it's phenomenal. Also, I mean, just look at the cast. Ned Beatty, John Voight, Ronnie Cox, Burt Reynolds. My man Burt, the late great titan of cinema. Yeah, I needn't say any more. Deliverance is number one. That's all there is to it.